and welcome to the Healing Half. My name is Mickey Spear, and I am coming to you live from Elko, Nevada. If you are able to hear me, please let me know in the comment section whether you're watching this live or as a replay. I have no idea if my service is working, but I would absolutely love to know that you are here and that you're listening. So let me know where you are calling in from. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mickey Spear. I am a grief musician, author, and talk show host. My mom passed away when I was 13 years old from cancer, and I spent the better part of a decade pretending I was fine and trying to convince the world around me that I didn't need to grieve. I was totally okay, and I don't know why everybody kept asking me such questions. Well, as you know, we can only run from grief for so long, and eventually my life started to crumble around me as my unprocessed grief flourished and came out of the woodwork. So I wanted to start a show now that I'm all those years after that point and I'm active in this grief community where we can each week take a quick 30 minutes and just pause and adjust our mindsets and perhaps recenter a little bit. And you may notice I am calling from a new location here. This is not my home. I am not living out of my car yet. I'm just kidding. But I am on my way to California, which is where I will live for the summer. And the show will be every Tuesday still. So just know I am here. My amazing mother-in-law and I are on our way to California. She's walking my little anxious dog outside. So you might get to see them here in a second. But let me know that you are watching. I would love, love, love to know where you are calling in from. So tonight's episode is called My Heart Still Remembers, which is actually the name of my song that released today. Now, I know you guys are watching on Facebook, so let me know in the comments, have you seen my music video that I put out? I worked really hard on it. I hope you like it. And it is dedicated to my amazing mom. And if you haven't watched it yet, make sure you go and check that out. Feel free to share it with a friend. The crazy thing, I'm going to dive all into what My Heart Still Remembers behind the song, behind the music video. I'm going to play it for you here in just a second. But the crazy thing about Legacy that I just wanted to share with you guys is that music video has a box of photos in it. And that is like 1/10 of all the photos my mom took. She was absolutely a picture nut. She took pictures of everything. So it's kind of fun to think this music video wouldn't have happened had she not taken a bunch of photos. So those are real photos from my family, from my experience. And I really wanted to share them with you guys tonight via that music video. So I hope that you are able to check that music video out. I hope that you liked the song, and I'm going to play the acoustic version for you here now. Now, just a heads up before I jump into the message for tonight, as you can tell, I'm kind of in a interesting location, so I cannot comment like I normally do, but afterwards I will be sure to put the links from the show in the comments. So circle back to this page a couple minutes after the show ends and you'll find my link to My Heart Still Remembers, so that way you can find it on all of your platforms that you prefer. Some people prefer Spotify, other people prefer Amazon Music or Apple Music. It's lots of different things. My mickyspear.com/music will have all of them. And as always, if you are on my email list, check your email because this morning you got one with that link included. So it's so good to see you guys. I am so happy. I see all of you tuning in. This is so great. So My Heart Still Remembers is the name of both my workbook and my upcoming song that I will play for us to kind of conclude our time together at the end. But what do I mean by that? And why is this important for anybody who has lost anyone at any point in their life? One of the things that I had to really come to grips with through my grief journey and through learning that I cannot handle this, I'm tough and I don't need help on my own. Like, that's just not, you can't go through grief that way, right? The only way through grief is through grief. And give me an amen in the comments or like that if you agree. And as I realized that I need to lean into my unprocessed grief, I needed to own the fact that my mom was an important part of my life, and that when an important part of our life goes away, our heart still remembers, which is why so many of us who have lost people have lots of memories and lessons and all these things that we carry with us. But unprocessed grief, in my opinion, if I'm going to put it in the easiest of languages, is not acknowledging that part of our foundation. So if you have lost somebody that meant a lot to you, and you've bought into the lie that I know I bought into for a very long time, that I'm fine, I can just keep busy, I'm going to kind of repress those thoughts and toss them out the window, you probably, like we all do, have unprocessed grief. But here's the thing, you guys, and here's just the amazing thing, that if I could go back and tell teenage Mickey one thing, I would say life is so much better on the other side of that bridge. When we decide to acknowledge our trauma, which is loss, when we decide to say, you know what, this person did matter to me and I do miss them. And these memories that I have are still a part of me. They're still part of every fiber of my being. When we start to go down that path and we start to actually acknowledge our pain, it's amazing the transformation that happens. And that's my whole mission, you guys, is to encourage all of us to acknowledge all of the losses that we had. So if you want to, feel free to go grab a piece of paper. I've got a little activity for you called a T-chart. Now, we did this literally a year ago, which is so crazy, but it's something I came up with that helps us put into place exactly why a loss is hard for us. Because I think we hear from people like myself, and all these other people perhaps around you saying grief is hard, grief is important, blah, 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 blah. But it's sometimes hard to conceptualize it. So I wanted to do 3 things with you guys, but kind of in regards to My Heart Still Remembers. And then I want to talk a little bit about the music video. I'll play the song and we'll wrap it up for the night. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the T-chart, which is simply getting our brains to a spot where we can see on paper the reason why our loss is hard. And perhaps that will convince us to begin down the path of healing. And I know it's hard, but these are not just for losses that happened in the last year. I'm talking like since your childhood. What losses have you had? Because if you don't name it, if you don't claim it, you're never going to process through it. And it's amazing how unprocessed grief comes out in negative ways. It can be irritability, anxiety, always feeling like you're on the go and you're ungrounded and you're very flighty, perhaps is another way to say that. So there's lots of ways that unprocessed grief comes out. So step 1 is just, why is this important? Why does this loss matter? And if you get a piece of paper out, like we've got right here, I want you to, at the very top, just pick one of your losses. Sometimes it is easy to start from most recent and work your way backwards. So unfortunately, I recently, within the past year and a half, I lost my amazing grandma. She was so special to me, and I'm still putting all the things that I say into practice with myself. So I'm not preaching at you. I'm right in the trenches with you guys because I miss her so much. And just because you conceptually understand grief doesn't mean it's any easier. So sometimes it's easier to start recently and kind of start with that person. Other people find it easier to start at the beginning and think, okay, what was my most, biggest loss as earliest and my biggest loss? Perhaps it was an aunt. Perhaps it was someone, a grandparent, someone you were close to, but you perhaps weren't able to conceptualize it at the time. Whatever that is, it was somebody that really was special to you. Pick that person. And the great thing is you can come back and do this anytime you want. I just want you across the top to write their name. So for me, I would write grandma. Then I want you to just write a T-chart, just a big T down the middle. And I want you on one side to write grandma and any names or whoever it was to you. Like if an alien came into your room and said, who was this person to you? Just describe it on this side. Like, this was my person. This is who they were in relationship to me. And on the other side, you're going to circle that person and you're going to draw an arrow. But this is where this really comes into play in regards to My Heart Still Remembers, into getting us into the mindset of why processing our losses are so important. I don't want you just to list that one person. I want you to think from front to back, who have you lost that was important to you? So for me, on my big losses list on this left-hand side, and I apologize if it's flipped for your screen, I would kind of have my grandma, because she was my most recent big loss. Then I would kind of move down the list and I'd say, okay, but the next one would have been my brother-in-law, passed away from suicide. So I'd write Brendan. Then I'd kind of keep going and I'd say, okay, who else was really big? And I don't mean to discredit any of the other losses I've had. I've had a lot. I'm not meaning to diminish them, but these are some of the big highlight reels, dare I say. Then I'd keep going, and I would find my grandpa, sir, passed away. And then my first big loss was my mom. So on this side, I would have grandma, who she was to me, perhaps grandma, self-sufficient, self-explanatory. And then I have all my losses. And then on the other side is where I pick one of those names. So I pick grandma for this one, and I circle it and I draw it over, and I just start listening for that one person. What were the things that were so special about them? What did I enjoy doing with them? How did she make me feel? What were activities that we did either consistently together, just like daily routine, Price is Right, dinner at 4:30, these things that were so special to me, but perhaps seem meaningless, all the way up to big things, like what were big traditions or big lessons that I learned from her. And that list, if you can't come up with anything, challenge yourself to just come up with 5 things. But I bet once you get that ball rolling, set a timer for 5 minutes, and I'm pretty sure you can start coming up with just things that you start to remember about them. It could be the way they smelled, the way they looked, a phrase they did, a gift they bought you, whatever it is. And then I want you to, after your timer goes off, just to stare at this piece of paper for your T-chart and really own the fact that this is hard. And I think that's the whole point of My Heart Still Remembers, is because death is common. I mean, my gosh, it's not, you don't have to look far. We've all lost people of varying levels of closeness at varying ages. Death is a thing. Like, there's a lot of death in this world. And so it's very easy to dismiss our pain and say, well, geez, yeah, other people's parents die. People get old, they die. Like, that's what happens. Accidents happen, illness happens, and it's easy to dismiss our pain. But I don't want us to do that. And I don't want us to do that for 2 reasons. I don't want us to dismiss our pain because it obviously causes a lot of unprocessed grief to wreak havoc in our own lives. And that's not what we want. But I also don't want us to dismiss our pain because what we tell ourselves about ourselves is how we actually treat other people. So if you are dismissing your losses as, well, old people die, that happens. People get sick, accidents happen, that happened 20 years ago. That is the same narrative, believe it or not, that we run our thoughts through. It's the screen we run our thoughts through when we're talking to other people about their pain. So if you want to be a better community member, and that's another part of my mission of my show, is not only address our own wounds, but learn how do we help other people with theirs. We have to get kinder to ourselves because we're going to be kind of unnecessarily harsh to people on the other end if we aren't compassionate to ourselves. And you don't want to have, your best friend lose a parent and say internally, even if you would never say it out loud, well, yeah, he was in his 70s. Because that's not going to allow you to really empathize, and it's definitely not going to allow you to be compassionate and actually help that person in that spot. So that's why the T-chart is so important, to just soak it up and be like, man, this mattered. All these people you can do a T-chart for, and I will create a booklet for you guys one day. Give me a couple weeks to settle in. That can maybe walk you through that a little bit smoother. So that's the first thing. The next 2 things are the reason of why it's important that we kind of go through that phase of like My Heart Still Remembers. Is a couple weeks ago on the show, I talked about moving forward versus moving on. Let me know if you watched that episode. I would be curious that if any of this is going on, to continue connecting dots for you guys. If not, feel free to go check it out. On that show, to summarize it all up, it basically said there's a difference between moving on from something versus moving forward with something. So the reason why not only are we talking about T-charts and owning our grief, but another reason why we have to acknowledge that we have things that our heart remembers is because we can't really move forward with it if we don't acknowledge what it is we are moving forward with. I talked about on the last session with that episode about imagine a wagon behind you filled with things, and you are carrying it around everywhere you go, and whoever meets you sees your wagon. I mean, obviously you can be a little selective of who you tell your whole story to, but that is part of who you are, and there's no need to be ashamed of the people that you've lost or the lessons that you've learned or the life things you've gone through, and that's the wagon you take with you. And so if we don't first do the T-chart and acknowledge we've got stuff in this wagon, that we can't even get on to step 2, which is acknowledging the wagon, right? And making sure that as we continue on our journey and we continue healing, that we unkink the hose. And that's kind of point 3, you guys. First step is do a T-chart. The next reason is kind of visualizing that wagon, carrying it with you. You are carrying so much with you that we have no idea how deeply ingrained memories and smells and senses and feelings are in our brains. I know it's crazy, but if you really, really wanted to dive into it and really get still and think back, you can remember things vividly from very early on in your life. Even if you're in your 60s, I bet you could remember things from when you were 3, 4, 5 years old. That's crazy. And don't get me wrong, I wish my brain would let go of something so I could remember basic things like people's names and birthdays that I seem to escape me in my present mind. But for whatever reason, in our DNA, these things are with us. And if we don't acknowledge them, there's no way we're ever going to really take full advantage of them. So let's do our T-chart. Let's acknowledge that wagon and just be like, okay, I've got these things and they're part of me. And then the last reason why it's important to just accept the phrase, my heart still remembers, is because it allows us to lead by example. As I mentioned earlier, not only should we do things for our own benefit, like the T-chart and the wagon metaphor, and okay, I'm taking this with me. I'm not alone. I've got work to do, but it's part of my foundation, and I should never be ashamed of that. So not only should we do our own work, but the big reason my heart still remembers is so important is so that way when we look at other people and other people's pain, we are able to be not only more empathetic, but we're able to set an example. You probably have someone in your life who's experienced a loss, and once you kind of realize what unprocessed grief looks like, and you kind of understand like, oh, they're keeping really busy right now, and every time I ask about so-and-so who passed away, they dodge the question, they're off on the next task. You'll start to realize there are red flags of unprocessed grief, and everyone's on their own journey, so you can't rush them through it. However, what I will say is when you start to process your own stuff, no matter how big or how small, and you start from the beginning or from backwards and work your way through this stuff, not only is that going to encourage you to have actual testimony where you can go to your friend and you can say, hey, I did this. So if I can do this, you can do this too. This is how it helped me. Take it or leave it. But like I can tell you, it's better on the other side. That's one reason why this is so important. But then also, as far as setting the example goes, if it's a mutual loss, let's say, you've got a sibling or a cousin or a friend, but you lost someone in common, you can find the courage and be brave enough to initiate an activity that you might feel like is an inconvenience for people at first. But I promise you, at worst, people are going to say, it's a couple minutes, I'll do it, whatever. And at best, it can be life-changing for the person who perhaps has been pushing away grief. An example would be, you're coming up on a holiday. Father's Day's right around the corner. Don't forget, I've got Fatherless Father's Day cards for anybody interested. I'll talk about that here in a minute. But let's say, Father's Day is coming around, and for whatever reason, you have not really talked about your loss surrounding that. one thing that you could do is you could say, hey, we're all getting together on this day anyways. Would you guys be okay if we just did a candle lighting ceremony and just kind of kept that going for the day, just to kind of remember our dad on this day? And people are either, again, worst case scenario, they say, sure, and they let you do your thing, and then they kind of move on. Best case scenario is it allows them to finally have a spot and a place to begin. So many people, myself previously included, have no idea where to begin. So when we really internalize this idea of my heart still remembers, it deserves to be processed, it's amazing how transformational it really is. I've used this metaphor once before. I'm sure I will continue to use it again. But I love this idea of a hose. You think of a backyard and you walk up to your hose and it's going crazy and it's spraying everywhere. You can grab it and you can kink it, right? And then all of a sudden, I don't know how water systems work. I don't know if we're exploding internal systems when we do that. Hopefully not. But it stops to flow. When we do not let our past come into our present, when we do not let memories surface and pause and be like, yeah, I do remember. Do you guys ever get that way where you'll just be driving and you'll randomly think of some playground you played in 5th grade or something, and you're like, where the heck did that come from? And I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything, but I know that happens to me often. And most of the time I brush it off and say, that's weird, and I keep going. But the challenge that we have for all of us is to ask ourselves, what if when those random memories pop up, or perhaps they're not so random, when they pop up, am I going to pause and honor that thing, for whatever reason, that's bubbling up inside of me? Sometimes it's as simple as saying, okay, memory, I'm driving past my mom's old house. I'm pausing. I'm acknowledging that you're here. What do you have to say to me? And just kind of be still in those moments for a couple minutes, and it could be done. Perhaps you acknowledge it and you realize, oh my gosh, it is triggering something big, and I need to set some time aside later on and go through it. Either way, every bubble up, I no longer think of as a coincidence. I no longer say, oh, that's weird, and I move on. I pause and I say, that's not very weird. It probably is my subconscious telling me I need to work through this stuff. When those things come up and we allow ourselves to pause, we are unkinking the hose and we are allowing a flow from the past through our present. And then, of course, the beautiful thing is it comes out of the hose, and that's where legacy comes into play. And it affects not only our lives in a positive way, but when we allow the legacy of our loved ones, our foundational people from our past, to flow through us, we actually end up blessing other people. My kids, who are non-existent, I do not have kids at the moment, my kids will know my mom through me. And that's eerie, but it's beautiful and it's powerful. Your friends and your family will know your loved ones through you if you let their legacy live on. They might not be able to say, like, you know, oh, this exact behavior was tied to this exact person, but you'll know the impact that they had on your life. And I think that's what's just so important, is when we unkink the hose, as we kind of talked about this whole thing with My Heart Still Remembers, we finally acknowledge the burden of memories that we have been carrying. And we tell ourselves, yeah, I remember. I haven't forgotten. I might be a very different person than I was 20 years ago, but that's still part of the fabric of my being. And that is who I am, and that deserves to be celebrated. So that's My Heart Still Remembers. It's kind of the message behind it. I will put in the show notes, as well as in the email follow-up, a link to my book, like the actual workbook that can help get you started on that, as well as some other great things too, like Zazzle. I have Fatherless Father's Day cards come into play. I've got a lot of things that I'll send out in my summary email that will happen here shortly. But if you are already on my email list, check your email, because that all came to you this morning. If you're not on my email list, that will come within the next week. So this is my new song, My Heart Still Remembers. One of the lyrics that I'd really like you to focus on is kind of the intro one. It's right off the bat. And again, if you haven't watched the music video, I hope you like it. It's on Facebook now. I'll say it for you, so when I sing it, perhaps it makes a little bit more sense. It's, this town keeps buzzing, it looks the same, it's been a while since they've said your name. And I just want to kind of pause with that, because I know as we, come into summer and there's so many holidays and things where we normally would spend perhaps with our person, if that's the relationship you are grieving. And it's really important to kind of be like, you know what, it has been a while since someone has said their name. And the town that I drive through every single day, back when I was in Minnesota, in a way I remember so vividly walking through that with my mom, and the grocery store looks the same and the Walgreens looks the same. And it's so weird that the world can continue on and yet our person, a huge, massive part of our heart, is missing. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. That's one of my favorite lyrics of the whole song. This town keeps buzzing, it looks the same. It's been a while since they've said your name. Yes, I know it seems like the world has moved on, but my heart still remembers every little thing. Your eyes, your smile, your laugh, your love, the way it felt when you held me. My heart still remembers, it's where you'll always be. Your spirit pulses through my veins with every new heartbeat. Sometimes the pain goes from flames down to embers, but my heart still remembers. Until we meet, until we meet, until we meet again. I will not, no, I will not forget. Until we meet, until we meet, until we meet again. I will not forget. Ooh. My heart still remembers every little thing. Your eyes, your smile, your laugh, your love, the way it felt when you held me. My heart still remembers, it's where you'll always be. Your spirit pulses through my veins with every new heartbeat. Sometimes the pain goes from flames down to embers, but my heart still remembers. Oh, I'm in a parking lot and people are waving at me. That's awesome. So hey, thanks you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm so honored to be part of your grief journey with you. Again, if you're on my email list, check it out this morning. You got all the information on the Fatherless Father's Day cards, My Heart Still Remembers, the song link in your inbox. And if you're not on my email list, make sure you head to mickyspear.com/music, check out the song, check out the music video, share it with a friend if you feel called. I am just so honored. I'm so excited for this song. And as always, don't forget you are not alone on this journey. We're all in this together. And if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. I will see you next week from sunny California. Well, it's Northern California, so I guess I don't know if it will be sunny, but stay tuned, stay active, and you guys stay beautiful. I am so grateful for each and every one of you, whether you're watching it live or as a replay. Thank you so much for being part of this and making my, this community what it is. So have a great night, everyone. I'm about to hit the road. Bye.